Good morning, year six. I hope you're well and have had a good day so far. Today in our English lesson, we're going to be learning about a skill called enjambment. I'm not too sure exactly how to pronounce it. And they're going to become familiar with a poem from Wilfred Owen, which is called Anthem for Doomed Youth. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that poem today, as well as looking at some other skills. To be successful in today's lesson, we'll need to read that poem, so Anthem for Doomed Youth. We'll need to consider what the messages Wilfred Owen wanted to convey, to deliver. We need to think about the way he used different devices, and we'll need to understand as well what a sonnet is, and then practice the devices he used. A sonnet is a type of poem, and the devices are the things within different types of poem. Just to think about the techniques and the devices we know that poets use. So can you remember which one each of these is? Okay, so we've got the idea of words that imitate the sound they describe. Anybody shout it out what that one is? The use of like or as to describe something. So that's that figurative language we looked at when we were writing our Gothic fiction earlier in the year, where we use a phrase or over and over, or a word over and over, where to describe something as if it is something else, where we use words at the end of phrases when they've got similar sounds, and then the repetition of the consonant beginning of words. See which ones, any of those match those? What do you reckon? Out them out if you think you know. First one is onomatopoeia. So crash, clap, and that was clap, wasn't it? Clap, bang, tap. All those are onomatopoeias. Okay, where the sound is the same as the word, or sound mimics the word. Okay? Similarly, where we've got like or as, and we compare something. Okay, Mr. Spring's hair was like a giant bush now. Okay, it's getting towards a bush. Let's see where it's going to end up. Repetition, so we repeat, we repeat, we repeat. I tried not to say it in the definition. Metaphor is similar to a simile, but we don't contain those words like or as, because we actually say something is something. The world was empty or something. Okay, so I'm trying to think of a metaphor offhand, and we'll see if we spot some within Anthem of Doomed Youth in a bit. Rhyme, then. We like to rhyme all the time. I know lots of you are competent rhymers, and we're hopefully going to see some of that in today's work and the work going forward. And then alliteration. So we like to alliterate. We love to like that. Okay, I'm trying to think of really bad examples off the top of my head, but you get the idea. We've got that alliterative sound where the consonant at the beginning of the sound of the word is repeated, the sound. Okay, guys, there's a word within Anthem of Doomed Youth, which is demented. Now, you can see there's different ways that demented is used. Okay, it can be a term of abuse where we describe somebody as demented if they're losing control. It can link to the word dementia, which tends to be in older people, an illness which affects particularly their minds as they become older, and the deterioration in terms of their understanding of what's going on with the world. Okay, but the way it was used for soldiers in World War I was maybe to describe those who experienced what's called shell shock, if you remember. So Wilfred Owen was somebody who experienced this, and we can see the picture of the soldier who's just trying to block out what's going on in the world. He's not acting rationally necessarily. He just wants the sound, the guns to stop. We can think of a definition of something like mad or insanity, and then demented. In Latin, meant to mean without out of your mind. So when you've lost control of what you're thinking, what you're considering about the world. A synonym might be something like imbalanced, and an antonym might be collected or in control. And pigs, so pigs live in these things called arks. You might have seen them. They're kind of curved houses. If a pig's living in an ark and it acts in a really crazy way, a demented way, it might tip the ark over. Okay, it's just an example of how it's not just soldiers, it's not just elderly people with dementia, but anybody or anything can be described as acting in a demented manner. Okay, it tends to be where you've lost control. We'll see that word within Anthem for Doomed Youth when we read it now. It's by Wilfred Owen, so the same poet as Dulce Decorum Est. What passing bells for these who die as cattle? Only the monstrous anger of the guns, only the stuttering rifles' rapid rattle can patter out their hasty horizons. No mockeries now for them, no prayers nor bells, nor any voice of mourning save the choirs, the shrill demented choirs of wailing shells, and bugles calling for them from sad shires. What candles may be held to speed them all, not in the hands of boys, but in their eyes, shall shine the holy glimmers of goodbyes. The pallor of girls' brows shall be their pall. Their flowers of the tenderness of patient minds, and each slow dusk a drawing down of blinds. Okay, so that it's important to remember, even within the title, Doomed Youth shows us how Wilfred Owen is now viewing the war. As he's experienced the war, he's gone from being this activist who thought that the fight was good and valid and he wanted to fight for the war. Now he thinks doomed youth, so the soldiers who are going there are going to die. Okay, we've got some skills within here: alliteration, rhyme, repetition, metaphor, and onomatopoeia and simile. Let's see if we can spot them. So alliteration, we've got the idea of only the stuttering rifles, rapid rattle. Then we've also got, the idea of the simile with what passing bells who die as cattle. So with the alliteration, we've got stuttering rifles, rapid rattle, and we've also got the idea of the ing sound. So the glimmers of goodbyes. With the simile, we've got the idea of as cattle. So that the normally when we're talking about cattle dying, we're thinking about beef burgers, because beef burgers are made from cattle, from cows, and we don't maybe mourn them as much as we would a person, hopefully, for most of us. Okay, so therefore the idea here that the mourning of cattle, the soldiers are dying like cattle, is showing that they're expendable. They're not treated as something that matters as much. Looking at the poem again, then, we've got some assonance here. So if we look here, we can see no mockeries now for them, no prayers nor bells. So this is the idea, the "o" sound within the no mockery now for them, no prayers nor bells. The "o" is repeated quite a few times within the line, the sound, the assonance, okay, the vowel sound. Also within the only monstrous anger of the guns. Okay, the "o" sounds repeated within that element of the sentence as well. Okay, consonant as well is where, rather than a vowel sound, we've got the consonant sound is in the same line. So here we've got the shrill, demented choirs of the wailing shells. Okay, we've also got imagery, which is a skill where we think about things, about what we can see, what we can hear, what we can smell, what we can taste, and what we can feel with our fingers and our other body parts. Here we've got the idea that similarly to the similes, we've got that line around cattle. But here we can hear the passing bells. Okay? What passing bells for the? So what can we hear? Because normally when something dies or when something's walking to an abattoir, there might be a bell on it, like a cow might have a bell on it, or we might, if there's a funeral, hear a bell. But here the soldiers aren't getting the bells of funerals. The soldiers are getting the monstrous anger of the guns. And here then we've got the idea of not in the hands of boys, but in their eyes. Okay, so the idea, the candles aren't being held to think about them, but they're in their eyes. So showing that the light is going out of their eyes. So it's different senses being used for the imagery to conjure the idea of how people are feeling about the death of these soldiers and how the soldiers themselves are feeling about their deaths. Sonification we talked about within our figurative language around Gothic fiction. So it's this idea of human qualities to non-living objects. So here the guns are personified. Okay, so the monstrous anger of the guns. So guns have emotions, but the anger that they're showing in terms of how the machine guns or the other weaponry that we've seen developed as World War I's gone on, the anger that their actions are causing shows that they're being treated as they're being written out as though they've got emotions, that they are feeling anger. They're being personified to make the point that the fury that they're causing is greatly problematic. Historical questions we looked at, particularly within our work on Roald Dahl work and Charles Dickens world, and it's that persuasive technique sometimes. And this poetry that we think of these poets writing is trying to persuade people not to fight again. What passing bells for these who die as cattle? What candles may be held to speed them all? So again, here we've got the idea that these questions don't need answering. They're making a point. They're making a point that the soldiers are not being treated as well as other people who die would. They're not being commemorated with candles. Okay, so the point is being made. It's not one that's needing to be answered as a question. Enjambrement then is this new skill that we're going to look at today. The other ones you will have touched on, don't worry, we're going to look at them each lesson next week, where we start thinking about how we can use those skills. We're just picking them at the moment. But normally, enjambrement is quite grown-up skill within poetry. And the idea is that things don't stop at the end of a line. So a line carries on. Poems are a bit different to normal narrative or formal non-fiction writing. Poems here, then, they don't have punctuation marks at the end. The poet might use it to cause a break in a rhythm or the rate of reading, or to move a reader through a complete thought without noticing the line ended. So sometimes the poem is about the message rather than the experience of reading it. And if that's the case, they don't want the reader to suddenly go, oh, a rhyme, or oh, a new line. So enjambment is almost, it's just keeping going. It's keeping going and not having a stop in it. So a couple of examples here. This poet called Wordsworth. The holy time is quiet as a nun, breathless with adoration. The broad sun is sinking down in its tranquility. So after both nun and sun, although they rhyme, there is no punctuation. Similarly, after never, keep, and asleep within Keats' Endymion, there's no punctuation at the end of those lines. Okay, so a thing of beauty is joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness, but still will keep our quiet for us and asleep. So the strength, the focus on that word happens at the end of the line, but there is no punctuation indicating it. So as a reader, you make the points. But enjambment then is this idea that you don't always put punctuation at the end of a line. And we can see that here with the verse doesn't come to it, the thought doesn't stop at the end of the line. So if we see here, not in the hand of boys, but in their eyes shall shine the holy glimmers of goodbyes. So it's almost like a sentence, but a thought about the idea that the boys who die aren't being commemorated like normal people will with a candle at a funeral, but in their eyes, the light is going out in their eyes, the fire that they're witnessing is going out. Okay. Right, there's lots of skills then within this poem, and I've got 8 listed here. What I'd like you to do as writers is, your task at the end is going to be to think about, I'm just going to go back, so to think about these 8 skills and to try with those 8 skills to use each one yourself and to pick from the poem where those skills are being used. If you're not sure, you can look back at this video. So this core skills list is basically what you've got to complete by trying to look at the poem and see if you can identify those skills within the poem. The poem was what's called a sonnet. Now, a sonnet, or certainly the traditional Elizabethan, so Shakespearean, so Queen Elizabeth I time, sonnets had 14 lines. Okay, they're believed to come from medieval songs. That's where their origin is perceived as. Now, a group of lines within a poem are called a stanza. 8-line stanza is called an octave, because you see oct, like octopus, has 8. Sestet is a 6-line stanza. A quatrain is a 4-line stanza. Think of quadrilaterals, 4-sided shapes. Couplet, a couple, 2-line stanza. And a sonnet then is a 14-line poem. Flanders Field was actually a 15-line poem, but kind of copied the technique of a sonnet in lots of respects. A sonnet normally has this structure of A, B, C. Sorry, this spot's gone in the wrong place, but A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. That's the rhyming pattern. So you can see A, B, so cattle and guns. Then you can see A again, so cattle rhymes with rattle, and then guns rhymes with sons, okay? And you can see then the second section here is E, F, E, F, sorry, C, D, C, D. So again, rhyme with the first and the third lines of that quatrain, that 4-line stanza. So bells rhymes with shells, and choirs rhymes with shires. Again, the 4th quatrain rhymes, but this one's slightly different because we don't see here, as it should be, E, F, E, F. We see actually E, and then F again, and then E. So this one's E, F, F, E. Slightly different. Okay, so we can see that goodbye should really be the or the pal. Okay, and then minds and blinds does rhyme at the end. Okay, so that final line rhymes at the end. Sorry, those boxes are in the wrong shape. Okay, your work then, think about those devices that we talked about at the beginning and how they might influence a reader to think about the message that they're putting across. When you read something that's got onomatopoeia, what does it make you think of? Does it make you feel like you're there? When you hear a rhyme, does it make you engage with the poem more? And then looking in the Anthem for Doomed Youth, can you try and find the examples of these 8 skills that we've talked about today to try and pick them apart? Thanks for your attention, Year 6. Looking forward to seeing your attempts at those skills soon. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.